Opportunity knocks for the Thunder this week with at least 3 games that seem to be winnable. But is there even greater opportunity in the trade market? I'm Mike Sherman, and this is One-on-One with Thunder Madness. With me today are Thunder beat writers Darnell Mayberry and Mike Baldwin. Guys, I'll toss up the questions. You debate them. Let's start off with this. Long term, what was better for the Thunder last week? The win over Golden State or the near loss to the Denver Nuggets? Darnell.
I'm going with the win because I think, professional sports are all about wins. You got to win. You play the game to win. The fact that, this team is still struggling to get 9 wins and they're still threatening the 72-73 Sixers, every win matters. So I think you have to go with that win.
Mike.
I'll go on the other side of the fence, and that's because, one, this will be the most memorable game the fans have had all season long so far. Probably when it's all said and done, they'll rank in the top 3 or 4 or 5. It was one of those games also I think gave them confidence because they had a 14-point lead, blew it, came back, still found a way to take the lead. So, we keep saying all along it's not a matter of 10, 15, 20, 25 wins. They're going to get past that 9 mark. That's not going to be a factor. This team's playing too well to not worry about that. That's why I think that game with Carmelo is one the players, and the fans will point to the rest of the year.
Okay, guys, next question. What's the most likely chance for a win this week? Tuesday against the Knicks at home, Wednesday at Minnesota, Friday again at home against the Rockets, or Saturday in Chicago? Mike Baldwin.
Well, the first two, the Knicks and Minnesota. I'd say Knicks, the very first one out of the chute, because, the Knicks are coming off a big win at Boston. We asked Scott after practice yesterday, does teams sometimes go flat after a big win, or does that give them momentum? He said he's seen it both ways. I'm curious to see what Knicks team we see, because right now the Thunder's playing consistently pretty good. Not at a high level with the great teams, but they're playing their best ball probably in the last month or so, the last 2 weeks. The Knicks, let's see if they can duplicate what they get against the Celtics.
Darnell.
I want to say the Knicks because it's at home. It's the worst team they face, and it's at home. But I got to go with the Timberwolves because this team's only got 4 wins. They got 1 against the Timberwolves, and it came close to getting another one against the Timberwolves had it not been for Mike Miller and his last-second shot. So I'm going to go with the Timberwolves.
So it's a back-to-back. That would be a big accomplishment. Also, when you look,
if they could win them both, and then they were that close against Carmelo, they wouldn't be that far away from a 4-game winning streak. But if they lose them both, it's the same old Thunder we saw a month ago, so close yet so far. That's why his point earlier is true. They pointed it out in the Sunday paper. George Karl, I don't want young, lose. They develop losing habits. I think that's the stage for this team, is they need some wins. How many and how often remains to be seen. But we can't just keep talking about moral victories the rest of the season.
Okay, next question. Who's going to be the more effective big man the rest of the season for the Thunder? Nenad Krstić or Chris Wilcox? Darnell.
Great pronunciation on his name,
Thanks,
by the way.
I'm trying.
I can't pronounce it, so I'm going to say Nenad. Nenad, I think, because Chris Wilcox has been injury-plagued this season. He's been inconsistent. I think Nenad is going to come in. He's going to give them a consistent score. He's going to be able to pick and pop, pick and roll with Russell Westbrook, and just free things up. I think he's going to be a more consistent rebounder than Chris Wilcox. I think Chris Wilcox's defense will be better, though.
Mike.
I'm going to go with Crispy because they called him Curly in New Jersey because the coach couldn't pronounce his name. I'm just going from now on, Crispy. That's what we're going to call him. I agree, Crispy's probably going to be the guy that, ends up having the better role over the long term. But Chris Wilcox has been undervalued. It's no coincidence that when he was out for 5 or 6 games, this team did not play well back when PJ was coaching. When he plays, this team plays better. Crispy will be the better impact, and Chris Wilcox may even be traded, something we're going to talk about later. But do not devalue what he's brought to this basketball team all year.
Okay, next question. Speaking of trades, who makes the most sense as a Thunder trade partner? Which team? Mike Baldwin.
Well, everybody says Denver, and then you ask George Karl before the game. He says, no, we got to get under the luxury tax. We can't bring on any more salary. It depends on which rumor. You hear Orlando, you hear Miami, you hear a lot of other teams. Toronto's even mentioned some. Right now, everybody's speculating. Only Sam Presti, agents, and all those guys know. And I think the fact that guys like Carmelo Anthony went down, does that mean Denver may take on more salary? Other injuries around the league may force teams to say, let's call Oklahoma City, we have a need.
Darnell?
I think you look at the teams are playoff teams. You look at the Boston Celtics, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Detroit Pistons, teams that are going to make the playoffs that are trying to get one final piece, whether it's a Joe Smith or a Nick Collison or a Chris Wilcox, that need that one final piece to get over the hump. I also look at teams that have young players that Sam Presti can build with going forward. If you look at a guy I know you like, Morris Alman in Utah, a shooter who they tried to get C.J. Miles from Utah last summer and couldn't do it. I think if you look at any team that has young players who, for some reason are in a doghouse in their current situation that maybe need a new team, I think that's what Sam Presti's looking at.
Neither of you guys picked one. I'll pick one. I'm going to go with the Boston Celtics. I think there's some stuff out there that could be done with the Celtics. What's the best the Thunder can expect for the Joe Smith in return? Darnell.
You got a first-round pick for Kurt Thomas last year. Sam Presti flipped Kurt Thomas twice and ended up getting great value for him. Joe Smith is every bit as good as Kurt Thomas was for the Spurs last year before he went to the Spurs and for the Sonics when he played for the Sonics. So I think Joe Smith is going to have that same type of value. Whether it's a young player or first-round pick or future first-rounder, I think that's sort of what you can expect for Joe.
Mike?
Well, part of it is who you end up trading with. If it is a Boston or a Cleveland, those are teams at the bottom of the first round. The pick's not worth as much, and so they don't mind giving it up as much compared to somebody that, like we said, a Miami that's right there in the middle, think they can make the playoffs, and they want another piece to try to improve their seeding maybe slightly. They're not going to give up their draft pick. You might go for a young player. So I think part of it is who you trade with on whether it's a draft pick or a young player.
What would you rather have, guys, as a return on your trade? Picks or players? Mike?
Well, this draft, with Blake Griffin being at the top, some people say, well, you don't have a Tim Duncan or one of those superstars. So that shows you the kind of draft it is. But a lot of other people say there's pretty good quality, 30 through 40. So you can play it both ways. If you can get some of those mid and late first-round draft picks, you can get more players like they got DJ White. They got some of those other guys in the past that we haven't seen yet, guys that are stashing over in Europe. I almost say that you get more draft picks, but at some point you need young players. It all comes down if the right young player is available, Sam will get him. If not, he'll just keep getting picks.
Darnell, this is a team that's got a bunch of picks.
Yeah, I'm going to go with players because they have a lot of picks. You're already in a good position going into June's draft with the picks that you have. I think you have to get players, and it depends on which player you get. If you get a young player, then that's good. A lot of teams don't want to give up young players, but if you get a solid guy who could still be 27, 28, he doesn't have to be 22, 23, I think you can go with that value as well.
Let's talk about a trade chip for the Thunder. Earl Watson. Will Earl Watson be dealt? Guys, can Earl Watson be dealt? Darnell.
He can be dealt. I think it's hard for him because he's making about $6.5 million this season and next season. So, that's an expensive price tag for a backup point guard. However, will he be dealt? I think the fact that, he is a valuable player. A lot of people in Oklahoma City are down on him because, he gets himself in trouble. He might overpenetrate at times. But there's a stat out there. There's 17 players in the league averaging 6 assists or more. Earl Watson is one of those players. And you can't just say that it's on a losing team because 8 of those players are on losing teams. So Earl Watson is a valuable player. I just think Oklahoma City doesn't realize it.
Coming off a big game, Mike Baldwin had a great game against the Nuggets. And his thumb's getting better. But like Darnell said, you know what? Next year, Earl Watson will be the highest paid player on the roster as it's currently constituted.
Well, that's why it may be hard to deal him, but I agree with Darnell, the fact that he's got a 2.5 assist-to-turnover ratio. His minutes have gone down a little bit since Westbrook went in the starting lineup. I think he's perfect for an NBA playoff contender that needs a good backup point guard that's about 15 to 18 minutes a game. That's what he's always been. That's what he's good at. With his hand, you just threw that out there, but I think that's a factor. I think he's going to start shooting the ball better, and if a team out there sees that, they say we might bite the bullet, take on this $6 million salary. Is he tradable? Yes. Will somebody want to step up $6 million a year for a backup point guard? That's what each individual team has to decide.
Okay, last question, guys. Most likely to be in Phoenix, Russell Westbrook for the slam dunk competition or Kevin Durant for the big boys all-star game? Mike Baldwin.
Oh, it'll be Westbrook. Durant, as he said in the paper he gave Darnell the other day, he's not all-star worthy right now because of the team's win-loss record as much as anything else. He is 6th in the league in scoring, and usually if you're dividing the conferences East and West, that means 3 are in the East, 3 are in the West. He's one of the top 3 scorers in your conference. But there's so many stars right now in the West. I think this team's going to have to win more games probably next year for him to be a viable all-star. I look for him to be in the all-star game next year. Westbrook is not a slam dunk to win that voting, but I think he's got a better shot.
Darnell?
It's a shame that this team is 4-30 because Kevin Durant is really putting together a great season to be only 20 years old in his second year. But I think, your answer is Russell Westbrook because not only is this team struggling and that's hurting Kevin Durant's chances, but Russell Westbrook is turning heads. All of these cities he's going to, he's turning heads with his athletic ability. He went to Detroit. He had 2 monster jams, if you remember that game. Everywhere he goes, he had a couple in Atlanta. D.C., he had 1 or 2. So everywhere he's going, people are saying, ooh, Russell Westbrook, who is this guy? And I think that's sort of building fan interest.
Thanks, guys. That's all for today's show, but you can continue the debate at Oklahoma's best NBA fan website, thundermadness.com. And you can follow the best coverage team anywhere, every hour at newsok.com and every morning in the Oklahoman.